Welcome to Click for IB Biology. We're studying evolution and speciation. And here we're going to be taking a look at what is called hybrid infertility. This is where we have two different species, let's call those A and B, that they are able somehow to reproduce, sexually reproduce, but the hybrid of the two species combined turns out to be infertile and seems to point to the reproductive isolation mechanisms that we have been discussing in the speciation process. There's a blank version of this, a blank PDF down in the description. You can then annotate your own notes onto that one and then take the 10-question quiz. It's got answers so that you can check your understanding and your learning. Hybrid infertility. So as mentioned, we've got the idea that if we have reproductive isolation, then there are some kind of barrier to the gene flow. We've been discussing that in the process of speciation events, there's the idea of allopatric and sympatric speciation with the geographic isolation or the behavioral temporal isolations. But once that's occurred and the gene pools begin to diverge into different directions, so let's draw a diagram of that. We've got our original population. Time is on the y-axis like this, and then we have this speciation event where we've got species A and species B, and at this event we've got the isolating process, sympatric or allopatric, and that as we progress along these lines there will be a gradual change in the population through a change in allele frequencies and the accumulation of new alleles, even though there's no further speciation, so that we end up with species A and species B, and very often they can no longer combine together to produce fertile offspring, and we call that hybrid sterility. So this hybrid sterility, which results when two species try to breed with each other, there are some possible explanations of this. They could be prezygotic barriers in which courtship, behavioral, and song isolate the two populations A and B from each other. So in this particular case, we've got these birds of paradise shown here, and they have different courtship dances in the different species, and that means that they don't respond to each other, and so therefore they don't breed. So that's prezygotic, zygote referring to the fertilized egg. This is the grey tree frog, and this uses song, very distinct songs for different species, and this isolates them that they don't respond to another species' song, and so therefore they don't actually breed. There are also postzygotic barriers to creating this hybrid sterility. The classic one, of course, here will be this animal here is the mule. And the mule, of course, is a cross between a horse and a donkey. And whilst the mule is an exceptional animal, extremely sturdy and very famous for its role in the colonization of the Americas, despite its tremendous uses as a pack animal, mules cannot breed with mules because they are sterile. The reason for this particular sterility is because of, in the hybrid, that the number of chromosomes which come from the gametes from the horse and the donkey, when they combine together, they leave a combination which is an odd chromosome number, leaving the mule sterile. And so the isolation is between the horse and the donkey in that their hybrids are sterile, and so this maintains these two species isolated from each other. There are also emerging in contemporary studies of features of what are called epigenetic reprogramming, in which there are alleles in different species which bring about, one is, this one here is called PRDM9, which in the zygote results in a clash between what are called the chiasma hotspots, and the chromosomes cross over in unusual manners, which is extremely disruptive, rendering the zygote unviable. So there will be more physiological barriers to the crossing of species, which result in hybrid sterility. These are just a few that we can show you. However, it is not, just to contrast this briefly, it is not always the case that where we have two species defined by the biological species concept and that they have been in reproductive isolation, it is not always the case. Let's draw that diagram like this. So let's call it C and D for argument. Okay, so we've got population C and population D, species rather C, species D, and they come back together again. And we've been arguing that there will be hybrid sterility, but this is not always the case. A famous case of this most recently with climate change is the interbreeding between polar bears and grizzlies, which does appear to produce viable, fertile offspring. And so that would be an interesting contrast against the hybrid sterility that we're assuming always occurs with reproductive isolation. Our next video, our last video in this particular sequence, is appearing on the left about abrupt speciation in plants. There's a chance to subscribe to the channel. That would be greatly appreciated. But here's the playlist of all the reproductive speciation videos for you as well, for your quick reference. Thank you for listening.